Martin Odegaard has been Arsenal's captain, creator, and one of the most loved players in the club. However, in recent seasons, some fans are starting to feel like his influence isn't the same. So is Odegaard fading, or has his role simply evolved? Welcome back to All About Arsenal, and today we'll be having a quick discussion about our leader, Martin Odegaard. As it stands, I don't think his influence is as exceptional as how it used to be. Prior to when he became captain, his form has really declined, especially with the injury he had for Norway last season. And I think it's high time we just talk about it. No, as Arsenal fans, Odegaard is someone that we really love. He's someone that Arsenal through and through came up in that loan spell from Real Madrid, really impressed in the loan spell. The deal was made permanent for just £35 million, one of the best deals I believe we have done in recent memories. However, as seasons progressed, we have come to see different type of Odegaard that isn't that maestro, isn't that creator that we used to have. And I think it's high time to just ask ourselves that question: has his influence really dropped, or is he just focusing on what tactics he's been assigned to do? One would think that based on how influential he's supposed to be, especially as the captain, he's supposed to lead the team through tough times and even when things are not falling on well. But in recent times, we have not seen that. So let's just talk about it. The 2022-2023 season was a different beast for Arsenal. We just came off that disappointing campaign where we came fifth to Tottenham, coming fourth. That was in 21-22, and we're going to go to the Europa League that year. But what Arsenal did in the Premier League in that season was amazing. We broke our goal scoring record. I think the 88 goals we scored. And one key thing that stood out from the campaign was the fact that our players were actually, very fit. We didn't really have injury challenges. And that kind of used maybe 15 to 16 players or thereabout for the entirety of the campaign. Obviously, with the Europa League being the Europa League now, we didn't have to necessarily play our big guns there. And when we eventually went to a knockout round against Sporting CP, we decided to play our big guns and we lost to Miyasu and Saliba in that game. However, Odegaard was something else in the Premier League. He scored 15 goals and he led on 7 assists for his teammates. That still remains his personal best as a footballer for the team, scoring 15 goals. And those goals propelled us now, to where they almost finished at the top of the Premier League. However, we all know how that panned out. It started with the 2-2 draw against Liverpool at Anfield. Then we went to West Ham. West Ham missed the penalty and game ended 2-2. Then we had that embarrassing 3-3 draw with Southampton before losing 4-1 to Manchester City to basically kill off the title challenge. I think there's also a loss to Nottingham Forest further down in a couple of weeks or so. But the Odegaard that was in that campaign was something else. 15 goals, 7 assists. And even fully lit up in the second season, that the 23-24 season, where we also went all the way to the final day of the campaign to, challenge Man City, even if we lost. But in that campaign, Odegaard had 13 goals and 11 assists in all competitions. So these numbers were very outstanding. These are what we expected to see with Martin Odegaard. And it was only enough to build our confidence in him, being the man that he's our captain. He came up with the goods as we expected him to do. Led us some very amazing assists for his teammates, and the numbers were very perfect, in all honesty. However, there was a sharp decline. And that decline started sometime in November 2024, yes, when he suffered a terrible ankle injury while playing for Norway. And with Odegaard going out, it was basically a clear thing that Arsenal struggled. There was a certain Nwaneri that would have used in that period, but at the time I won't say the word not trusting of Nwaneri in that time, but I think he felt he used Trossard and Kai Havertz in the middle, and that combination didn't really work. So Odegaard obviously spent a couple of months out injured, and as Arsenal fans, and I believe that he was rushed back into action because when he came back, He was a far cry from the Odegaard that we knew, the Odegaard that was always beating and bossing things. His numbers drastically dropped from 15 goals and 7 assists to 13 goals and 11 assists, all the way down to 3 goals and 8 assists. And that was something that, Arsenal fans could see clearly. He wasn't as influential as he used to be, especially in games when we needed him to help keep us grab at the scruff of his neck. We didn't see that Odegaard anymore. Like in fact, we're actually very vocal of him potentially even staying on the bench. Just that obviously we didn't have the right level of depth to replace him. Waneri was kind of also playing for Bukayo Saka in his wing because Saka also suffered a long-term injury as well. So that reclining form was a big concern for Arsenal fans, and till that campaign finished, that was the Odegaard we got. He had a couple of assists here and there, but for some reason it didn't just work out for him. But funny enough, towards the end of the season, I think he scored a couple of goals. Scored one against Southampton, if I remember. Had a good shot against Liverpool and Marino, and rebounded and stuff like that. But maybe I feel maybe the injury was finally gone, or he just maybe got new boots. I don't know. But toward the end of the season, his form was slightly better. But last season was an aberration for a player of his caliber. Another key factor to consider while the guy was struggling was the rise of other players. Do you hear me? I said rise, rise, rise. Of course, Declan Rice rose to prominence last season. Of course, in that left eight row, Thomas Partey playing at the six, and he scored some very vital goals, assists. He was a monster on the pitch every time he was playing, and we could see his influence rise. He started acting like a captain, despite not being the captain, if you get what I mean. He was someone that could rally the team. He was someone that could help us in very tight moments. And of course, when we're looking for that final goal to secure our second place finish last season against Newcastle, it was you right that stepped up, to score that vital goal for Arsenal. So while Odegaard's form was reclining, Rice was on the rise, and that kind of shook things up a bit. There was also an emerging Itamaneri who started playing centrally in Odegaard's position, giving us now another thought process of okay, this is where the future might probably be. Because obviously Odegaard was struggling, and you could see that there are other people within the team that also rose. Kai Havertz is also someone that rose to prominence in the sense that he came in as a midfielder to play alongside Odegaard initially, but he was moved forward to play him as the de facto centre forward, and he was scoring so many goals. So you could see goals coming from the likes of Saka, you see goals coming from the likes of Havertz, you see goals coming from Rice. But we also needed Odegaard to be in that scoring act, but he was not doing that. Obviously, the way the other teammates rose kind of overshadowed him a bit. Another question to ask is it really about Odegaard, or is it the tactics involved? If you remember in 22-23, Odegaard played as a right eight and as a 10. And the fact that he was moving into 10 most of the time allowed him to be at the end of some very good chances where he ended up scoring. But in recent times, Odegaard tends to just focus more on the right eight. The only time we see him further up the pitch is when he's pressing real hard and trying to rally his teammates to press with him. But what we've noticed is that when he starts out his press, there's no one around the team that presses as well as him. Although we're getting Gyökeres, who is a good presser as well, so maybe we can see that dynamic change. But our tactics kind of, they're very, very one-dimensional. All go to the right. Odegaard, Saka, another white or timber. At some point, opposition players started learning how to double up on that right, that right zone to stifle out the progress of Odegaard and Saka, and it kind of really affected the way we play as well. So there's also the issue of having the right balance. Obviously Partey was always at the base, with Rice as the left eight and Odegaard as the right eight. And it's something that we continue to do, but because Partey was not that good in transitioning the ball or progressing the ball real fast, Odegaard also had to drop deep most of the time. And when he dropped deep, he couldn't really influence the game as much as he'd have liked. This would be a time when we used to see all those imperfect threaded passes from Odegaard to the Arsenal forwards like Havertz and Co. But that really, really kind of came down last season. We're not seeing that form from him again. And due to those tactics, Odegaard was basically the one that was trying to do more of the pressing, trying to create space. rather than being the man in the final ball. There used to be a time when he used to be the guy that would just kill it off, drop deep into the box like Ramsey. But most importantly, thread those inch perfect passes to his teammates. However, we're not seeing that anymore, and that was basically a challenge. So is Odegaard a feeding star or a quiet leader? I think he's just working with the tactics that Arteta gives him, and that actually demands for him to drop deep most of the time. That actually demands for him to, press more. So we have not really seen much of those key Odegaard passes we've become accustomed to. And I think it's kind of really affecting him. I'm really hoping that he can get back to that form, or maybe at least playing alongside the likes of Iberici, Eze, Saka when he's fit again, would help us get to that point. Right now, as I'm about to play Nottingham Forest, and would expect Odegaard to start that game. And with Saka injured, he will have to play alongside Madueke and Timber. We really hope that he can pick up form because Arsenal needs to challenge for the Premier League this season against the likes of Liverpool and Manchester City, and Tottenham, and even Chelsea. And we need Odegaard to be in his best form for us to get to the promised land. So while his influence may look like he's less flashy, Odegaard still remains a crucial player for the team. He's the captain, he leads the press, and the ability remains there for him to get those passes to his teammates. But what do you guys think? Is Odegaard actually a feeding star right now or just a quiet leader? I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments. And of course, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and keep following all about Arsenal for more Arsenal content. Come on, you guys.